Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'll be talking about a trio of cases that happened in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They are known as the only three in 1909 to 1937 sex murders that children were the victims. Only one remains unsolved. Arthur Buddy Schumacher, 8, of Wauwatosa, started out with 3 playmates from an Amity River swimming hole the morning of July 24, 1925. When a man jumped off a freight train and shouted at the boys, Arthur's companions fled. As they looked back in their flight, they saw Arthur talking to a stranger. A railroad employee also witnessed the scene. Next day, the mother notified authorities that the boy had disappeared. A posse scoured the countryside in vain. Bloodhounds were used. A description was broadcast throughout the country. The Wauwatosa quarry was also dynamited twice. 7 weeks after Buddy's disappearance, a mushroom hunter came across the badly decomposed body in a woods near the county institutions, not far from where the boy was last seen and a mile from his home. A gag was found wedged between the boy's jaws. He had been strangled and then apparently attacked. From the examination of the body, Dr. Edward Miloslavik, famed pathologist, reconstructed the tragedy. Arthur, unafraid, was probably lured to the thicket by the stranger. When the shadows of its dense undergrowth were reached, the man probably seized the boy, who then began screaming. The gag was wedged into his mouth and, with his hands pinioned, the boy choked to death. His overalls had been torn or slit with a knife, according to the coroner. In November, William Brandt, former Milwaukee newsboy, confessed in the Minnesota State Penitentiary he was the slayer. Brandt was serving a life term for a similar crime in St. Paul, but Buddy's companions and the railroad employee failed to identify Brandt as the man last seen with the slain child, and the prisoner's account of the murder did not jibe with all of the facts. This is the only one that remains unsolved. In December of that same year, the burned and mutilated body of Roy Tolzman, 8, from Milwaukee, was discovered in the smoking ruins of an old barn at North 63rd Street and West Lisbon Road. The head was missing and the legs had been severed from the body, apparently with a scythe. Then the barn was set afire in a desperate attempt to hide the crime. Roy had disappeared on his way home from school. He was with his sister when a former employee of the boy's grandfather came up and gave him a dime. The sister went on home and told of the incident. When Roy failed to appear, Detective Sergeant Walter English questioned the man, Jack Steinert. Steinert said Roy had run off to a grocery store to spend the dime, but English, now chief of police in Wausau, recalled that Steinert had once served a term for a sex crime. He learned that Steinert, too, had worked around the barn that had just burned. Digging in the still smoldering embers, detectives found the body. Steinert soon confessed, telling how he had attacked the boy in the barn and choked him when he screamed. When he learned the boy was dead, he set fire to the barn. He didn't remember about hacking the body. The next day, he was on his way to Waupun to serve a term of life and 20 years additional to destroy any chance of parole. In November 1909, Hattie Zinda, 14, was reported missing. When her mutilated body was found, it was in a river shack formerly occupied by Carl Wojciechowski and Adam Pietrzyk, itinerant laborers. For 3 weeks, they were hunted and finally captured in Blaney, Michigan on December 6, 1909. 3 days later, Pietrzyk confessed, telling how his companion waylaid the girl, assaulted her, and choked her to death while he looked on. A few hours later, the killers had been tried, convicted, and sentenced to life imprisonment in Milwaukee's first and only night court session.